So welcome to this spotlight session on grounded theory with MAXQDA. I'm Stefan and I'm working with MAXQDA for more than 20 years, and I'm also involved in the development of MAXQDA. So please note that there is a handout for this session. It's a very substantial one. It's comprising 8 pages, and you can access it when you click on the resources icon in your Zoom control panel. And then you can click on the Documents tab here, and there is a PDF linked that you can download directly here, containing the information that I will present to you in a written form. And I will also point you to a MAXQDA press guide at the end of this session. Okay, so it all started in 1967 with this book from Barney Glaser and Anselm Strauss on the discovery of grounded theory, when they laid the foundation for their approach of analyzing qualitative data. Many books on grounded theory followed, for example, those from Anselm Strauss and Juliet Corbin, but also others, again, from Barney Glaser, and of course, Constructing Grounded Theory from Kathy Chalmers. So many different approaches to grounded theory and how to do grounded theory have been developed over time. Although they may differ on how exactly grounded theory is shaped and done in their approaches, I think there are some core principles of grounded theory studies we can identify. And first of all, usually we're dealing with an iterative process in grounded theory studies. So we're starting with some data collection, for example, conducting some interviews, analyzing them, and then deciding on what to collect, what data to collect next. Is it more interviews, more other data, with whom, etc. And then coding plays a crucial role in grounded theory studies. No matter what approach you are following, but the main idea is often that you start with low-level abstract codes, and they develop further to higher-level abstract codes and categories, for example, to core categories when you're following Anselm Strauss and Juliet Corbin, or Juliet Corbin's latest approach on grounded theory. Also, writing memos plays a crucial role and should not be forgotten in grounded theory studies, because it supports your analytical thinking. Like memo writing is analyzing data, you could say sometimes, and it helps you also to record your insights, to be more on an analytical part of the analysis, and increase also the level of abstraction and the level of analysis in your memo writing. Besides coding and memo writing, another crucial role may play diagramming and concept mapping, which helps you to relate the different categories you have created to each other and to develop step by step your grounded theory. MAXQDA now supports all those principles that you're applying to your grounded theory study, and I will shortly demonstrate here and show you here in my presentation how it is supported by MAXQDA, and then I will give you a live demonstration on how some of the selected tools support you in detail. So let's start on this iterative process on organizing your data. And I think here it is crucial to point out that creating a new MAXQDA project right from the beginning is a very good idea, because it allows you to already note down your research question, your topic you're addressing, your plans for data collection, your plans for first data analysis, and so on, right from the beginning. And it also allows you to import all the data you have into one project, to have all your data at hand. So, for example, you have the images, you have some book excerpts, maybe also, you have your interviews, you have field notes. All that should be imported. And if you're having field notes, it's a good idea to import them as documents and not as memos, because documents can be coded in MAXQDA, while memos can kind of be coded with codes, or it can be linked with codes, but documents offer more options for coding than memos. And it's always a good idea to manage your data in a good way, in a structured way, right from the beginning too. So you could think of your document names and your grouping of your data. For example, you could create document groups for different data types like interviews, field notes, images, other data, and so on. Or you could group your data by the time of collection. For example, first phase, second phase, and third phase, as you can see in the second screen on the right. Then let's talk about coding. As I've mentioned, coding plays a crucial role in grounded theory projects. And when you look in the literature, you will see that all the authors are dealing with different naming of their coding, and they're doing it a little bit different. But the main idea is often that you're starting with low-level codes and you're creating open codes at the beginning of your analysis. And MAXQDA has a specific mode that supports your open coding process, meaning that you highlight a passage in your data and you directly can start entering a code name for it, a concept name. And then in the code memo, you could write and define information here. Then there is this idea of in vivo coding, which means that we are taking a piece of the data directly as a code or as a concept name. So for example, here, this is from an interview with caregivers who are starting to work in an autonomously working team. For example, here one person said, we were a bit of a little sweet chaotic bunch. And this could be highlighted. You could click the code in vivo icon, and then we directly get a code in the code system, which is here the little sweet chaotic bunch. So actually, this can be used to create in vivo codes directly and with only a few clicks. When you're doing an open coding, you usually end up with many, many codes, and they may be a long list in your code system here, like this one, or even 50, 100. Sometimes I've seen projects with 200 or 300 and even more open codes. And you're thinking you're having 100 codes and you're moving them up and down to start organizing your open codes. This may be very kind of a painful task here, doing it in a long list of codes in the code system. A better idea would be to approach the creative coding feature in MAXQDA, where you can drag and drop those codes and organize them into more abstract groups. You can add new codes here, kind of parent codes, kind of abstract categories covering all those concepts you have created or captured from your original data. And you can then later transfer this back to the code system. And I will show you how this works in detail later on. After I've completed here my overview. Strauss and Corbin suggested that it may be helpful in a grounded theory project, not for all, but for some, to work with a coding paradigm. And the coding paradigm consists of the idea that you're placing the phenomenon in the middle, then you're having the causes to the left, the consequences to the right, for example, the strategies and the context and the intervening conditions at top and at bottom. When we're doing this in a code system, we may define those parts of the coding paradigm as top-level codes here: causes, context, intervening conditions, strategies, consequences. And we could place the previously created categories and codes below each of those parts of the coding paradigm to structure our concepts. We could also do this in a graphical, visual way in MaxMaps. It's the diagramming environment, the concept map environment in MAXQDA. And here I have created manually a kind of a coding paradigm where I place the phenomenon in the middle, the causes to the left, and then the consequences to the right. And you can see that I already started here with adding some codes from my code system and to organize the relations and to think about how all the information that I've captured from the data could be organized into this coding paradigm. Memos, as I told you beforehand, play a crucial role in grounded theory studies. And MAXQDA has a lot of different memos at different locations, and you could think of sticking sticky notes somewhere to the data, and that's the icons that are representing this idea here. And memos allow you to note your own data, to record your own notes about the data you're analyzing, and allows you to think by writing. So, for example, here we are having some information. I was writing about the boundaries of autonomy, the process of a care team's autonomy development, and that I compared it to growing up. And I included some data from the original data to make this more clear. I also included a sampling idea here. So memos can contain many different information, and to keep track of different information in different memo types, MAXQDA supports those different memo types here, and I should call them type labels. So, for example, I was using the exclamation mark for to-dos, the question mark for questions, the T for theory parts that could go into the final theory, and so on. To manage all the memos and to keep an overview of the complete memos that I've written, I think it is important to see that we can access all our memos here in the memo manager. For example, the code memos or the document memos that we have applied to different parts, to different interviews here, for example. And we can merge different memos here by writing more analytical memos here. We have always all the memos at hand in the memo manager. When you want to create a diagram, or when you want to create a concept map, this is usually done in the environment that is called MaxMaps, as I've already mentioned before. And in MaxMaps, MAXQDA offers some templates. It offers templates for case-oriented models, and it offers templates for code-oriented models. And you could use those templates to create relations between the different parts of your data to further develop your theory. For example, you could create this code theory model, which is done in few mouse clicks, and which is very easy to create in MaxMaps. And then you can further develop your theory from it. Please note that this is not the final theory, it's just a step to creating the final one. Then MAXQDA offers something that is called the questions, themes, and theories environment. You could compare it to a scrapbook where you are collecting all the pieces of the theory you are developing, all the insights, the results, the outputs that you have created during your analysis journey. For example, you could send the code theory model to this questions, themes, and theory worksheet, as it is called here, and then you can note some insights here at the bottom. I think it's time to go to MAXQDA and have a look how it works in action here. So I'm introducing this MAXQDA project to you. It's a study on autonomously working caregivers who are starting to reorganizing their teams so they have many autonomy in their daily work. And this is, for example, an interview, and you can see that here on the right, interview 2 from Hamburg. And you can see that here, for example, many open codes have already been created. So we'll have a look at this text passage. It's called, or it's this one. Well, it's also important to me that everyone fulfills their role so that I can rely on them. And usually when we're highlighting a passage in MAXQDA, nothing happens because the main idea is that we can now drag and drop it to any existing code here. But when we're doing open coding, meaning we want to create codes for many pieces of text, and usually only one segment is assigned to it, as you can see here with all those ones, then their MAXQDA offers a specific mode for it. And this mode is called the open coding mode. And now it is different because when I highlight a passage for which I want to write a code, MAXQDA directly opens up a code. I can really start typing here. And for example, this is about fulfills their role. So I'm typing in role to show you that MAXQDA also lists all codes that I've created beforehand that contain the word role here, allocating roles, defining roles, fulfilling the role, taking the role. And I think fulfilling the role may already work. I could already apply it to the piece of data here, but I think it is more on expecting role fulfillment. So I don't use the suggestion of an already existing open code, which usually prevents me from an inflation of very similar or even identical code names, but I'm creating a new one here, expecting role fulfillment. And for example, I could write something in the code memo already. This is the memo part where I'm thinking about this in general, because when I read this, I was thinking, who defines roles in an autonomous team? Yeah, who is in charge there? Because actually no one is in charge there. And then we have another field, it's the comment field. And the comment field allows us to create a comment on this specific coding. So the assignment of expecting role fulfillment to this piece of text. And here, what paid my attention was, where I paid attention to was that the person here fulfills their role. And I think it's interesting that the person uses role, because I think it could also be a task, or it could also be responsibilities. And I was thinking, how do they connect? And this is a good piece of text where it could be attached to. So if I click OK, this is directly assigned to it. It is created here, expecting role fulfillment. The memo you can see here, who defines roles in an autonomous team, has been recorded here, and I can access it anytime later. I want to point out that MAXQDA now also offers many AI assist features. And when I highlight it here like this, I will turn off the open coding mode, and I right-click on this piece of text, and there is this option AI assist, and I can now ask AI assist to suggest new codes for it. And let's see what happens, because it's very interesting that we can use AI assist here in this open coding mode, because we get so many ideas how we could code this text. So let's have a look at the results. It's interesting. It's suggesting role fulfillment. It's suggesting reliance on others, teamwork. And I think already reliance on others is interesting here. I think accountability in terms of expectation of individuals to be responsible for their assigned duties is kind of the exact thing that I was thinking of when we're talking about expecting role fulfillment, but actually accountability sounds kind of more interesting here, or nicer. And there are also some interpretive codes here at the bottom, like organizational cohesion or trust, I think is a very good category here. I will only apply accountability here for this thing to give you an idea how this works. So accountability here has been applied, and is also available here now in this list of open codes. As I've told you, now we have a long list of open codes, and here, sooner or later, the question comes up, what are you doing with all your open codes? And here, the codes creative coding workspace is in charge, because here we can use this to organize all our codes. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking some of those codes here for a demonstration. I will place them here, start my code organization, and you see that we have now this accountability. We have expecting role fulfillment, and I'm already trying to organize them in a sense-making manner, being responsible. Yeah, let's take it here. Learning how to deal with conflicts, I think, is a different thing. Assigning tasks is also about the role definition and so on. Ability to deal with conflicts is about conflicts. Intervening in a moderating way is also maybe about conflicts, and all those are about roles. So I've already divided it into two parts, and usually it would be there would be many more codes here on the surface, but I think this is a good way to demonstrate it. So now it's time to create a parent code. For example, here I was thinking of a more abstract code like passive and active shaping of roles and responsibilities. And you see that I'm already increasing the level of abstraction and the analytical power here. It's not a code anymore. It's like a category already. And this is kind of a parent code that captures all those aspects here of allocating role, fulfilling the role, accountability, and so on. And I could format this, for example, in bold. I could, and so on. And now I can use this option here, link, define as subcode. And I turn it on to have a mode where I can now define those. Oh, here we go. Here I have this mode turned on. So we can define subcodes and we say, okay, this is the parent code and all the others are then later on subcodes. So I'm aggregating this. And I could do this also for the second one. So I could add another code. For example, I could call it dealing with conflicts. And I place it here. Oh, I'm still in link mode, so I place it here. I will also link it. I will also set it in bold to have it more catchy here. And I think it's a good idea to also change the color. So I simply click on it and I set a red color for the conflict code and I'm applying it to the subcodes already. And now I will show you what happens when I'm finishing my creative coding, because as you see now, the code system is still as it was at the beginning. And then I click on finish creative coding and I click on yes. And all the code organization that I've prepared there in this huge white space area are now transferred to the code system here. Dealing with conflicts, passive and active shaping has been integrated here, including the newly assigned colors. I see that already some questions are coming up here in the questions and answer, and I will answer most of them later on because it's hard for me to integrate them in my explanations here, but I will come back to them later on. So this is it about coding. So you see that we're already entering a higher level abstraction here with the codes up to categories, and we could further do this further by, for example, collapsing them and then working further with the parent codes, parent categories. So let's think about those memos a little bit. So you can see that here, for example, for exploring limits of autonomy, I've already written a memo, which is indicated by this yellow T icon, red T on this yellow memo icon. And if I double click on this symbol, you will see that the code memo here is opened and I can write in it. And you can see that I have linked a text in it. For example, here I have linked paragraph 22 from example 102. So here I have this. Actually, I've been doing well with autonomy. It's just that sometimes others haven't fared so well, which has led to a few shitstorms here. So this is the interesting thing that they were telling in these interviews, how they, with each step of being more autonomous, new conflicts arrived. And I have linked this here because it's all about exploring the limits of autonomy here. We can also link a code to this memo here. You see that here, for example, we have this drop code in memo field. And for example, learning how to deal with conflicts. I remember that this was an important part here for exploring the limits of autonomy. Now I have dropped this code into this field in the memo, so they are now connected, and later on I can use it for activating I can use it for later activating the code here and access it. So this kind of reflects the idea of grounded theory approaches that a lot of data is more and more connected, like having a network placed over our original data. Please note that here we have a specific memos tab in MAXQDA where we can access the different kinds of memos that we have already created. So for example, in my project, I have code memos, I have document memos, and there's a project memo. And there is this icon where I can access all the memos. And when I click on it, the memo manager will open. And the memo manager is a window. I will maximize it a little bit here, and it lists all my code memos, and it lists all the document memos here that I've written before, and a simple click on a memo opens it. So for example, here, the expecting role fulfillment or the exploring limits of autonomy that we've worked on, I can access it here then. I can create memo sets in it, I can export them, I can print them. So this is the place where all your memos are accessible at once. For example, we could also search in a memo for specific words. Small side note, for example, you could use hashtag sampling, and then you could search for hashtag sampling later on in your memos, where you noted all your ideas on further sampling, on collecting the next data. I will now change to actually the same project, but at a different project stage, so I can show you different features in MAXQDA, because here I want to show you the maps features and the models. So for example, here you see that I've already a code here. It's a passive and active shaping of roles. It's the same one that I've created beforehand, but this time it has a different color here. And I will navigate to the Visual Tools tab, the menu tab here, and then I will click on Max Maps to open the Concept Maps environment here. And you see that this project here has this map already, and it contains this coding paradigm beginning. So I already created this by hand and then added those codes that make sense for strategy. I also added some codes like increase in motivation and loss of motivation to the consequences. And for example, I think external and internal development is some of the consequences too, and I may drop it here as a consequence. And please note that I can now click on it, and there is this Format tab, and I can add a color to it. So let's assign this color to it. Okay, so here, for example, we can have some consequences and have them in this specific color. As I've mentioned before, there's also the option that we can use templates for creating a model. So for example, here's the code theory model. And here, my idea was to use this passive and active shaping of roles that you're already familiar with. I drop it here onto this area, and MAXQDA automatically places the subcodes around it, already places the memos around it, and I can say, no, I don't want to have the memos in it, or I want them. I don't want to have the subcodes in it, which is usually not the best idea for having a code theory model. But so it's only the question on up to which level we are including the subcodes, memos, the subcodes. And then I can click on Use Model, and you see here we have this nice code theory model. I can adjust it a little bit like this, and like this and this. So looks much more organized. And this, as mentioned before, is not the final theory, but may be a piece of the final theory, maybe a step towards it. And please note that on nearly every window in MAXQDA, you now have the option to send the current view to a QGT worksheet, as I've told you before. So, for example, here we have already one worksheet created in this project. It's called Autonomy. And when I click on it, MAXQDA sends it to the worksheet. And here it says Elements Sent to Worksheet. And no, it seems like nothing has happened, but in the background, it has been integrated, of course. So if I click on this analysis tab here, and then I click on QTT, questions, themes, and theories. Oh, and you see here it has been added. And I could write some insights here at the bottom. And you see I did this already here for the code theory model. So here we have already some insights that I've created here. Okay. Then let's go back to the presentation because I have some final remarks. So I think it's always a good idea here that you have a look at AI Assist, because AI Assist may support your grounded theory studies in many ways, and I've given you some ideas on the handout. For example, you could use Explain This, which creates an explanation, usually 1 or 2 paragraphs. If you are coming across an unfamiliar term or a jargon that is used by some jargon word that is used by participants, right? Or you could summarize a document to identify potential documents or parts of it for open coding. And I think especially the chat about a document and the chat about coded segments are very helpful. Now, if you want to learn more about AI Assist, there is also a link in the handout, and there are other sessions recorded here at MAXDAYS on AI Assist too. And my final remarks are MAXQDA offers various tools that are tailored for grounded theory research projects. And I think you can use these tools in a very flexible way according to your specific study requirements. And from my perspective and my experience, it is very crucial that you already have some methodological knowledge about grounded theory approach. This is very helpful. And to get some of this methodological knowledge, but especially to learn more about grounded theory with MAXQDA, I recommend that you have a look at this grounded theory guide with MAXQDA, and we're currently also placing the link to it, to this free guide at MAXQDA Press in the chat, so you can access this very easily. Okay, it's time now to answer your questions. So what I will do is that I will go through them one by one here, those in the questions. And I will copy them here, and then we can go through them. Is there any restrictions regarding the levels of coding? For example, is it recommended to have codes, subcodes, sub-subcodes, and long codes? Yeah, actually, there is no restrictions from a technical side, because MAXQDA allows you to create 10 levels of subcodes here. But actually, I think this is not the best way to do it. I think from my experience, usually having 3 to 4 subcode levels is a good idea for mainly any project, no matter if you're doing a grounded theory study, a qualitative content analysis, or other studies. But what is more important about this is that you think about how you want to manage it, and that from my experience, many persons are not are stepping away from being from starting to being abstract in their codes and thinking more analytical. They are staying often very at the low level, and they should be more curious about going in an abstract level. Okay, so I think here we have 2 more questions. Do you recommend using only codes for first order concepts, second order themes, aggregate dimensions? Okay. Or do you recommend using, for example, paraphrases for the first order codes and codes for the second order codes? Okay, this is the question which I need to explain, because in MAXQDA we can also create paraphrases. So for example, we can highlight a text passage, and then we can create a paraphrase here, and then we can I'm doing this with AI now because this is faster for me, and I don't need to do it manually now. So you see, this is a kind of a paraphrasing, condensed way of what is going on here. Actually, I think paraphrases may really support your grounded theory approaches, but I recommend to think of creating really abstract and concepts right from the start, because paraphrases are more on a summarizing idea and not a kind of Yeah, not usually not so analytical as. Of course, you can use the MAXQDA paraphrases to do so, and there are ways to then aggregate those paraphrases into more top level categories. Actually, to answer this question, I think both ways are fine to do. You can go with paraphrases, or you could go with concept first order concept codes. I would personally prefer codes because they are more flexible in MaxQDA. Is there a good feature to create the data structure in MaxQDA? Actually, for creating this data structure here, I think the best idea is to use document groups, and you can create a new document group by clicking on the green plus sign and then clicking on new document group. And please note that you can create two levels. So I could have one sub-level here, for example, interviews, and then interviews Hamburg, interviews Munich, for example. And I think that's the only feature you need for creating a good data structure in MaxQDA. Okay, so then the next star does not copy. Let's try again. Here we go. What workflow would you recommend to code handwritten field diaries? I think handwritten field diaries could be analyzed in two ways. You could convert them to a PDF, and then you could code your PDF directly, but then you will not code the text, you will code an image, and then you cannot search into it. So the best way would be, for example, if you have now anonymized data in it, you can use ChatGPT and other tools to convert those handwritten field notes into written field notes. I think it works with handwritten. I'm not sure, but I think it works. Or otherwise, you have to transcribe your handwritten field diaries and to include them in MaxQDA. I think this as a document, I think this would be a very good idea. Okay, the next question is, I already created a number of open codes, but I have also created categories. Yeah, the differentiation between codes and categories is sometimes hard to think of, right? However, the mass of codes makes it difficult to work with excerpts or even with all codes in the creative coding tool. What are your recommendations for this? Yeah, I think there are different ways to handle this. First of all, you could use different code colors to differentiate between codes and categories. So, for example, you have all those open codes with blue and all the categories already in red or something like this. And please note that creative coding can be started several times. So simply start by pulling in 20, 30 open codes, start organizing them. And I think it's a best idea to not wait too long with organizing your open codes, because it is not a good idea to have 300, or I saw a project with actually 2,000 open codes, and this is more data chaos than, let's say, yeah, it's hard to be very analytical or to get analytical, have analytical kind of progress then. Okay, so here is something more. I'm very interested in MaxQDA AI tools and would like to hear your thoughts about the ethical use of AI in research. Yeah, actually, yesterday I gave a keynote on those AI tools and I covered some ethical use there. I think it's a little bit beyond this spotlight session on grounded theory, but to keep it short, I would say that if you have consent from the from the interviewees, for example, to use AI tools, it shouldn't be a problem. Sometimes it may even be won't be a problem maybe without the consent, because nothing is stored somewhere. It's simply created and then directly deleted. But I guess usually it would be the best idea to use those, if you use those tools, to have consent from all the participants. And from an ethical side, I think it's important to understand that I treat AI assist as a companion, not as a replacement. I'm using it as an additional, as a second perspective to my view of the analysis. For example, when I was showcasing how you could use AI tools to create new open codes, I think it's a great inspiring tool. And you could mention this in your method section later, that you have created manual codes, and then for each manual code you were also asking AI assist for additional ideas on the text segment. Of course, it depends on the guidelines of your faculty. Okay. Do you recommend any specific textbook to navigate through both theoretical and practical aspects of qualitative analysis using MAXQDA? Actually, I would recommend the books that we have shown yesterday. You can access it at MAXQDA Press. It is The Practice of Qualitative Data Analysis, Volume 1, and The Practice of Qualitative Data Analysis, Volume 2, because here we are compiling 10 research examples in the first volume and another 10 in the second volume. And there all the persons are explaining how they were using MAXQDA for different research methods. I think the theoretical aspects of qualitative analysis are more located than in other methods books. For example, in this methods book, Focused Analysis of Qualitative Interviews, which is more on the qualitative content side. And as I already recommended, the Doing Grounded Theory with MAXQDA guide here, this one, contains a lot of reflecting on grounded theory too, and it includes also some thoughts on grounded theory methodology, at least some explanations, and for example, delimiting ideas to qualitative content analysis, for example. I hope this helps to answer these questions. This question. Okay, so this is the last one here in the Q&A section. It is, suppose I have organized my codes into 3 to 5 models applying code theory model in MAXQDA. How do you come up with the main grounded theory on the data? Yeah, actually the code theory model is just an idea how something relates to it. I think it's writing about it, writing a memo, writing some insights about it is a good idea. So I think I have it still open here. Yeah. So for example, what you could see here is that when you place all the information, all the insights in the QTT, you may come up with some propositions, because you could write your grounded theory in form of propositions. For example, here I was also already writing the design of autonomy requires a new type of competence that cannot be taught easily but can be learned. This was one of the main interesting things that this study revealed. And the next thing is also interesting. The more a person has developed this competence, the higher the chances that they will experience an increase in motivation. Because giving caregivers autonomy does not work for everybody, right? So they need support in different ways. And this could be included also here. And by writing down your main insights in form of proposition, by looking at your code theory models, may help you to develop the theory. Actually, I think theory development in grounded theory starts with the first entering of the field, because you're writing memos from the first beginning. And that's why it is so important to write memos. Okay, I think no open questions are there. If you have any open questions, please.
May I interrupt? There is a question in the chat that perhaps you could address. How can we apply Clark and Brown thematic analysis through MAXQDA?
Oh, okay. This is a complete. This is an interesting question, because there is a session on it. It is how can we apply Clark and Brown's thematic analysis through MAXQDA. There's actually a session in the afternoon, no? Or depending on your time zone, maybe in the evening or in the morning.
I will check and post it in the chat for everyone.
Yeah, that's great, because Christina Silver is giving this, I think I think there is one on thematic analysis, isn't it? Or no, she's doing one on literature. We will check, but actually there are recordings of former MAXQDA, the MAXDAYS, and there she already covered thematic analysis. So you can find it direct when you look on YouTube.